So I'm here with Steve Kirsch, and we're talking all things COVID. And one of the big problems is that Steve had an alternative narrative to the establishment COVID, as did I. We were called anti-vaxxers and snake oil salesmen and everything. So there wasn't a healthy debate. There wasn't any debate. You weren't allowed to debate. If it was cult-like mentality, and if you had a question about the COVID narrative that came from Fauci or the corporate media, you were immediately pushed out of the cult. You're immediately Jon Stewart is. It's now safe enough that Jon Stewart is actually going to ask questions about the vaccine. Now, he did a video most recently, and it was called "A Nuanced Debate" about the vaccines. Okay, it's got nothing to do with nuance. There was no nuance in this debate. What it is fucking 3 years late. And it's not courageous of him to do it. And what he's doing right now is it's safe enough for Jon to come out and do this. And then who does he bring on? Watch this. So we'll go through this, and you can comment whenever you want. So it's an hour-long video. I couldn't get through more than a couple of minutes. It turned my stomach so hard. And I'll tell you why. So here's how he starts.
Stepping on the third rail today, we are talking about the most controversial medicine known to man, vaccines.
So I would have liked of him to stop and go, and here's why it's the third rail. Why is it the third rail? And the reason why it's the third rail, Jon, is because Big Pharma has bought the media, and they silence and discredit and smear anybody who has any normal questions about it. That's why it's the third rail. Thanks for not mentioning why it is. That's why. Okay? So now let's keep going.
We're very excited to have joining us Dr. Gregory Poland. He's the director of the Mayo Clinic's Vaccine Research Group.
Pleasure.
Dr. Saad Omer, director of the Yale Institute for Global Health.
Thank you.
And Zeynep Tufekci, professor at Columbia University, columnist at the New York Times, and Pulitzer finalist for Bringing Clarity.
So thank God he brought on the mainstream establishment COVID propaganda repeaters. Thank God he didn't bring on anybody who had a counter narrative to the establishment. He brought on 4 people, or how many people that all they're going to do is repeat Big Pharma propaganda and establishment talking points. Why wouldn't you bring on Dr. McCullough to be a counter narrative to one of those people? Why wouldn't you bring on Dr. Robert Malone to be a counter narrative to one of those people? Why wouldn't you bring on Steve Kirsch to be a counter narrative to one of those people? Because he doesn't want a counter narrative, because Jon Stewart is there. He is funded by the establishment, always has been. He got all his millions of dollars from the establishment, and he is never going to challenge the establishment. And that's what that is. That's why he got 3 people that are going to tell you, why don't you just bring the head of Pfizer on, Jon, to have a nuanced discussion? Because you didn't have a fucking nuanced discussion. You brought on 3 people who are going to say exactly what Dr. Fauci would have said had he been on that show. How about you bring on somebody who's got a record of having patents and developing vaccines, like Robert Malone, and so he has some gravitas. He could actually push back. He didn't bring on anybody to push back. Nobody. So that's not a nuanced conversation. What Jon Stewart is doing now is propaganda. That's not a nuanced conversation, Jon. We could have got this conversation fucking anywhere, when guess what? We do. We get it everywhere, 24/7, every day on the Big Pharma bought media. We didn't need this. This isn't nuance. What Jon Stewart is doing is propaganda. Now, let's keep going.
So tell me what you really think, Jimmy.
What I think he does a great job.
But look, you have to give him credit for that one stint that he did on late night.
Yeah. So after it was safe enough to say that the Wuhan virus was that this COVID was probably created in a lab funded by the United States, then he said it. He didn't say it when you would be called a racist for saying it. He waited till you wouldn't be called a racist anymore, and then he went on television and said that and acted like he was courageous, just like he's doing now.
Yeah.
So, okay, and we covered it, so here we go.
Yeah.
Official guidelines.
All right, you're on a roll.
About the pandemic.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much for joining us. I want to start out with a disclaimer. I am a science-fearing man.
I am a good boy. Believe me, I'm a good boy. I would never question science, even though that's the scientific method, is fucking questioning. I'm a good boy. I love science. I'm not a Trumper, believe me. I'm not. I'm in the cult. I'm not outside the cult. This is amazing. You tell me I can't get through that. Here we go.
I believe vaccines may be, along with antibiotics, the most miraculous invention for public health in the 20th century.
Well, the beauty is, John, it's science, so you don't have to believe it. You believe in a religion. You believe in a deity. You don't have to believe in science, John, because there's empirical data. That's why it's fucking science and not a religion. Yeah, I believe. Look, what a good person I am. I virtue signal all these great things about no one could be a lover of vaccines more than me. Please don't kick me out of your cult.
But I too have questions, and I am confused. And full disclosure, I have been vaccinated, I think it's got to be 4 times. I get a flu vaccine every year.
The flu vaccine is completely useless.
Okay, Kate, please. The flu vaccine is safe and effective, and it works like a motherfucker. Please stop doing that.
Yeah, exactly.
Hold on.
Exactly. But if you don't get it, if you don't get the flu vaccine, it's okay because the outcome will be the same.
Okay. I can't. You are so full of it and lying. But let's go. Let's get back to Jon Stewart.
I am a believer, but I am also. I get fearful when I hear certain things about myocarditis or when the sands shift beneath us between the vaccine will eradicate this disease and, well, it will lessen your symptoms. So I want to give you guys an opportunity first to just make a statement about the vaccine, this conversation and all that. And we'll start with Dr. Polin.
Wow, can't wait.
Well, what I love is that he said he had questions.
Yeah, that was good.
What I don't love is that he waited until January 2023 to have those questions publicly.
Well,
it's
you
not
know what
courageous.
They say, Jimmy. Better late than never. Better late than never.
So
at least give him credit for finally asking the question.
Where was he for 2 years when people like me were actually sticking our chin out? People like you were actually sticking your chin out. Where was he then? Not that he didn't have to agree with us, but where was his sense of principle that it's okay to question? Because he had questions and he kept his fucking mouth shut and he let people like me do the heavy lifting. And now he's going to come in with a panel of the heads of Harvard and Yale and act like he's the truth teller. He's not. And maybe most of my vitriol is jealousy that he gets to wear that moniker of he's the truth teller when he's not. Okay, so here we go. Now here's the first guy he has on from Harvard.
Well, John, what I heard you say, I would call discerning wisdom. I think everything. I think everything you said was absolutely correct, and it was very well said. I've been a vaccinologist for 40 years.
Okay.
I would echo exactly what you said. Obviously, I'm a fervent supporter of vaccines. The data supports that it has been one of 3 things that has most prolonged the human lifespan and reduced suffering and disease and death. But we are right to have questions. We are right to be discerning. We are right to be skeptical. And communication style should reflect where we know.
So my question is...
I wish he would debate me.
You know what my question is? My question is, this guy is the head of the Harvard vaccinology thing, and he thinks it's right and proper and correct to question everything. And my question is, where in the fuck was this guy for the last 2.5 years. Why was he so quiet about that? Why wasn't he writing op-eds everywhere he could get one submitted to let people know that this campaign to silence people who had questions around the COVID narrative and vaccines should not be silenced? In fact, that's healthy and normal, and that we should encourage these people to ask questions because the truth doesn't mind being questioned. It's the lies that can't be questioned. That's where in the hell was this guy? He's the head of Harvard vaccinologist, and he wasn't screaming this on social media. He wasn't writing op-eds. He's going to wait until January 2023 to tell Jon Stewart that it's okay. You mean the shit that we've been saying, that I've been saying here for the last 2 years? He's going to now say it like he's some kind of wisdom guy? He's not. This guy's a coward like the rest of them, and he's a go-along establishment puke. But that's, of course, the kind of guy that Jon Stewart got on his show to interview. You want to say something?
Here's the test, Jimmy. Here's the test. You remember when Biden came up with the misinformation, the disinformation dozen?
No.
Remember that? They came out with the disinformation dozen. You can look it up on the internet. The White House had this big thing. They got out the U.S. Surgeon General Vivek Murthy, and he brought out this thing called disinformation dozen. And so it proved a couple of things. First is it proved that they can't count because there are 13 people on the list, and they called it a dozen. Okay, so
okay.
Other than
Baker's
that,
dozen.
okay,
Baker's dozen.
There you go. And the second thing is that it's basically censorship. It says that, hey, we can't debate these guys. We can't win on the merits. So let's censor them.
Yes.
So my question is, where was this Harvard guy? Like, was there a tweet from him saying, this is wrong? This is not how we settle debates. And this is not how we settle scientific disagreements in America. If we want to settle disagreements, they should be settled through dialogue, not through censorship. There has never been a point in history where it's been shown that censoring opposing views leads to better outcomes. Like, was there a clinical trial, a phase 3 clinical trial, randomized, double-blind study showing that the people who got censored, that in the country that used censorship to settle scientific debate, of course, by censoring the opposition, ended up with better health outcomes than the country that allowed people to resolve their differences through dialogue. Now, I haven't seen that study. Now, maybe I missed something, but I haven't seen the study. And I know these guys are all based on science, so they would have been very careful about making sure that they have a randomized phase 3 trial showing that censorship of the opposition is the way to go. So this guy should have been speaking out.
And he wasn't.
And
that's exactly my point. And
Absolutely.
And now he's going to act like he's Mr. Responsible. He's Mr. Coward. That's what that guy is. That guy doesn't have integrity. He doesn't have courage. He's a coward.
I'm going to reach out to him now that he said, "Hey, we should have debate." I'm going to call him.
There you go.
Wait, what was his name?
I don't know. I'll have to rewind the tape. But let's go to our next clip. I forget what this is. Let's see what he says.
Almost like it's a victim of it.
So this is the journalist from Columbia University. And so here's what she has to say about COVID. This is her opening statement. Here's what she says.
Almost like it's a victim of its success, right?
She's saying vaccines are a victim of its own success.
What a tragedy.
First of all, what that first doctor from Harvard and what she is, they're not going to acknowledge. They're talking about different kinds of vaccines. Mm-hmm. The old kind of vaccine we've been working with for over 100 years. The mRNA vaccines are brand new vaccine technology with no long-term studies. And they they conflate them. They pretend like the polio vaccine is just like the mRNA vaccines that we're taking now. And they're not. And they keep pretending that they're the same. And so that's what she does. Watch.
Almost like it's a victim of its success, right? Vaccines have completely transformed what childhood is like. If you walk by any cemetery, read any history books, just look at anything in the pre-vaccine era, you find that so many children died.
So, and what's especially egregious about this, Steve, is that children are not at risk to COVID. In fact, children are at a lower risk from COVID than they are from the flu. So what she's doing is spewing propaganda on Jon Stewart's show, The Problem, and that's the problem. This is not nuance. This is propaganda. Children are not at risk from the COVID virus. They're at more of a risk from the flu than from the COVID virus. And she's pretending like these vaccines are saving the lives of kids who aren't at risk. It's crazy. Yeah. And she's doing it. And she's doing it in front of a guy from Harvard. She's doing it in front of a guy from Yale. And she's doing it from a guy who takes corporate cash's entire money to fucking go along with the establishment, Jon Stewart. And that's exactly what's happening here. And he is not going to push back on this bullshit. COVID. And these are the experts that Jon Stewart brings on to give you the straight dope. We're going to have a nuanced conversation. We're going to step on the third rail. That's not third rail stepping on happening here.
No,
it's the exact opposite. This is confirmation bias. This is confirmation bias. That's all this is. And he brings on 3 people to confirm his bias. Okay, so here, listen to this. Tell me what you think of this, Steve.
Quite large number of people who thought this is brilliant. But wait, I have to get another one? Wait, but it doesn't handle that very... Oh, wait, but I was told this cures it. So it doesn't cure it. You can still pass it. And so all these things start to come up, and it becomes a victim of the very certainty of the powers that be. And these suspicions are not crazy. These are not crazy things to be nervous about.
Again, he's saying these suspicions are not crazy. Then why didn't you step up when they were calling everybody who had the same suspicions you had crazy? Why didn't you step up and say something like Jagoff comedian Jimmy Dore did in his garage? You have hundreds of millions, or I don't know how many millions of dollars he has, but he has millions and millions of dollars. He'll never have to worry about his career or anything. Why wouldn't you step up? I could get ruined. They can yank my show out from underneath me for telling the truth, which they tried to do for telling the truth. Where's your courage button, Jon Stewart? You kept all that shit to yourself, did you? You kept all those questions inside. Yes, that's what he did because he was afraid. And now it's safe because of people like Joe Rogan and people like me and people like you, Steve, and people like Dr. Malone and McCullough, because we stuck our chins out and got them kicked in. And now Jon Stewart, who at the same time had the same concerns and worries and thoughts and fears and questions, but kept them silent.
So how do we in a postmortem have a more adult conversation with people and not just shut them down?
So that's his big question. How do we have an adult conversation without shutting them down? You mean like the way you let it happen for 2.5 years without saying anything, and now that it's safe, you'll finally make a peep? Here's my last clip on this guy. So here's the guy from Harvard, and you tell me if this guy isn't a bullshitter.
In the 16 to 17-year-old age. If we give a million doses.
My son.
If we give a million doses of an mRNA vaccine, we prevent 57,000 cases of COVID-19, 500 COVID-related hospitalizations, and 170 COVID-related intensive care unit admissions.
So now he's doing the risk-benefit analysis. And he's saying if you give 1 million vaccines, you're going to save, let's listen.
In the 16 to 17-year-old age. If we give a million doses.
My son.
If we give a million doses of an mRNA vaccine, we prevent 57,000 cases of COVID.
You prevent. He's still saying that you prevent COVID. He's the guy from Harvard, so I guess he's right. Let's listen to what.
When was this done?
You tell me. Let's keep going. Listen to this. His name is.
Everybody knows. Everybody knows it doesn't.
Wait, hold on, Steve. Steve, hold on. This guy's name is Gregory Poland. He's the director of the Mayo Clinic's vaccine research. That's where he's from. The Mayo Clinic, not Harvard. Like I said, he's from the Mayo Clinic. And let's listen to some more of his stats. Ready for this?
500 COVID-related hospitalizations.
It prevents 500 COVID-related hospitalizations. So 1 million vaccines to prevent 500 hospitalizations. That's his number.
Okay.
And 170 COVID-related intensive care unit.
And if you give 1 million vaccines, that means 170 people will not end up in the intensive care unit. Wait till you hear his next stat. Here we go.
Admissions. The price we pay is 73 cases of vaccine-associated myocarditis.
So he's saying for every 1 million vaccines you give, you're going to have 73 cases of myocarditis. See, so this guy, I don't know where he's getting his numbers from. I don't know where he's getting his number from, but wait till you hear what he says next. This, Steve, is going to blow your mind.
Most of those are benign. In fact,
most of those 73 myocarditis reactions to the vaccine are benign. Steve, I know you're not a medical doctor and neither am I, but I have never read or heard of a doctor saying that myocarditis is benign. I've heard the exact opposite. So he's saying all the myocarditis that's been coming from the vaccine, nothing to it. It's benign heart swelling. Hang on.
hospitalize them. We hospitalize them more often than not to assuage our own fear. There's a rare one that can be more significant, but it is that teeter-totter I was talking about. And you know what it ends up being is your own psychological predisposition.
You got to wonder whether these people actually see patients.
To me, this guy from the Mayo Clinic, he actually seems evil. Let's listen to what else he has to say.
The sin of omission or the sin of commission. I have literally walked out of the consulting room with one mother saying, if something happened to little Johnny because I gave him this vaccine, I could never forgive myself. I go into the next room and the mom says, how could I not give little Ashley this vaccine? If she got COVID and something happened, I could never forgive myself.
Yeah, well, why don't you explain to her the risk to her kid from COVID is so low? Why don't you explain that to her? Why don't you help that other mother? She's like, well, they're both right. Who knows? Who knows what's good? So this guy is evil. That's not him making a mistake. This is that guy pushing propaganda 100%. And this guy reminds me of Collins from the NIH when he would come on CNN and lie. And this guy's lying. This guy's a propagandist. Steve, I just have to put a button on this segment by saying that the vaccines are safe and effective. They have saved millions of lives, and they will stop the
go out and get your booster.
They help. They're fantastic. I get short of breath. Yeah, I get short of breath.
I can't wait Jimmy, I can't wait to get my booster.
When I get my booster and I get short of breath, it's not from the vaccine. It's from my excitement at being protected.
Yeah, Jimmy, that's just a coincidence.
That's right. Everybody, we're doing live stand-up comedy in Los Angeles in January and February in Los Angeles. And then we're going to Tempe, Palm Springs, Milwaukee, Minneapolis, Nashville. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for all those tickets and become a premium member while you're there.